guys, thanks for clicking on my video. Today I'll be showing you how I kitbashed 2 Vengorian Lords using parts left over from Vargskyr, a Vargskyr and Reikenor. I picked up Reikenor with issue 48 of Mortal Realms. I got myself a few copies at £8 a piece. Oh yeah, please excuse the state of my hands in this part of the video. I just dyed my hair pink. I'm going to start by cutting the Vargskyr in half. If you're a frequent viewer, you'll notice that I bought an actual saw to do this now. Thank you for the suggestion. It is much faster than a standing knife and safer, so please do buy one if you're going to do this. My plan is to stick the leftover Vengorian Lord torso onto the Vargskyr legs using epoxy sculpt. It's mixed 50-50 to set the reaction going, and like green stuff, you have a few hours of working time before it becomes hard. It's still a bit soft for me to be messing around with trying to add the wings at the moment, so I'm going to move on to my next model and let that harden up. This time I'll be taking the other half of the Vargskyr and sticking it on top of the Reikenor's horse body to make a kind of ghostly were-centaur. I'll need to give him a bigger base though, so I just cut 2 circles out of thick cardboard and covered them with epoxy sculpt. For this model I'll be incorporating Reikenor's base, so I just built up some clay over the top to blend it in, then pressed in some more odd bits and bobs. For the second model, I did nearly the same, but padded it out with some foil to give him the height that he needed to match a regular Vengorian Lord. I used some terrain pieces as well to help give him something to stand on. So this was the next day, and the body had firmed up enough for me to think about adding the wings. They were of course from Reikenor's horse, or should I say Pegasus? But superglue wasn't enough to hold these quite heavy wings. I had to add some wire for extra support. I did this by heating a metal needle, melting holes in the plastic where I wanted the wire to go, then gluing the wire in place. Then I smoothed over some epoxy sculpt to also help keep them in place. I built a little makeshift pile for it to rest on, so it had time to firm up before it had to hold its own weight. Then I glued the torso back on, because it had been easier to attach the wings separately. And here's how they're looking alongside Vargskyr. It's gonna be a pretty monstrous army. I'm looking forward to seeing them on the battlefield together. I think they're ready to be painted. I'll be using my airbrush for the first time on these models and trying some object source lighting. If you don't have an airbrush, you can watch my tutorial How to Paint Vargskyr, where I just use a paintbrush, no airbrush. Or you can still try to simulate the same effect with dry brushing. I started priming it with some Vallejo black primer. You can easily do this with a spray can if you want. Then I gave it a bit of a zenithal with a white primer. I'm using a wash that I mixed up in my previous video, how to paint zombies. I think it's got Warlord Purple, Bloody Red, Black, and some Liquitex Matte Medium, and some water. You can just thin it down to the consistency that you like. I did a second wash with the same colour, just to darken it up a bit. Then I used another wash, which is the same but without the bloody red, and more black. So here's how they're looking with the airbrush, priming, and a couple of washes. Spraying with an airbrush is definitely better than spraying with a spray can, just because you get such a fine, even coat. I'm thinking now I'm going to have to redo a lot of models. Uh-oh. Okay, so it's time to highlight them now. So I'm just going to dry brush Rotten White, which is a slightly greyish off-white. I think they already look great. They have so much depth in them compared to without the airbrush. And look at the detail in this model. I absolutely love the Vargskyr model. Dry brushing has really brought out all of the texture in the skin. So I decided to go back in with the same wash that I used to begin with, just in the areas that I want to darken up. And while this was still wet, I painted on a bit of the darker wash as well and kind of let them bleed into each other. Now I want to get some stronger colour onto the models. So I'm using another mix that actually has Liquitex inks in it rather than Vallejo paints. The red is much brighter. I think I used the Liquitex Crimson, a bit of Vallejo Bloody Red, and some black ink as well. And then just mix that all with the Liquitex Matte Medium again. So I'm taking that same mix with the inks and using it on my airbrush now. It's much faster and you can get a really nice smooth gradient. I'm really happy with the way that these models are looking at the moment, but I want to try something new. I'm going to do some object source lighting, and that's basically where you pinpoint a light source on the model and do a really harsh lighting effect as if it was a real flame. So I'm starting by spraying that same red mix quite widely across the model, always with an angle that's radiating from the flame. The plan is for my radius to get smaller and smaller as I brighten up the colour until the flame is like a white hot colour. So for my next colour I used Orange Fire and sprayed a little bit less than I did with the red. For my third colour I used Sun Yellow. These are all Vallejo game colour, by the way. Just thinned down with airbrush thinner so that I could spray them. You can get purpose-made airbrush colour, but I feel like you actually get more value for money if you just buy the set of game colour and thin it down yourself. You're going to get more pigment for your money. So here I'd sprayed the yellow over the top and I think I did it a little bit too much. I also dry brushed a bit of white on the highlights and I feel like I've lost its warmth. So I'm going to go back in with the Orange Fire and just spray a bit more. Then I gave it one more wash with the darker colour just to deepen the shadows a bit on the wings. So let's take a look at how they turned out. I'm really happy with them as a first attempt for object source lighting. I'm sure there could be improvements. Let me know in the comments below what techniques you use for object source lighting, and if you think you might get an airbrush now. Give me a like if you liked it, and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, see you soon!